Can you send Agnes in?
Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, a very good morning to you. Continued coverage here on Paralympic Sports TV of the Alpine programme. The very final day, we hope, unless things get delayed, and we have to carry on into tomorrow. But this is the very first racer down in the Super G, the first run of the Super Combined. We will see the slalom, and it's Nicolas Berezhny in the men's visually impaired division. I'm Mark Dreyer, and I'm very pleased to welcome once again Chris Waddell into the commentary booth alongside me.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here. You can hear just how hard the snow is, can't you?
Yeah.
And listen to that. Each turn, you can just hear the skis on that ice. We have Nicolas Berezhny from France having a nice run this morning.
So his guide that he's following in the pink helmet there, Sophie Truck, and we see some races, some male races with female guides. We see some female races with male guides and a mix of each.
Exactly, and he's the first one down the course at this point, and Super G is different than downhill in that you don't have a training run in the Super G. They ran Super G yesterday. This course is really very similar to yesterday's course, but you do have a different course setter for this course, and so at that point it's a little bit different. There'll be a little bit of a variation. Remember, there was a little bit of a corridor right there that is not there today, and so he's the first guy setting the standard, and the people at the top, the coaches along the course, will all be on their radios. They'll be talking about it, wondering how does the course look, how's it run.
Now, as we see the second man down, Gabriel Gorza-Yepes, Chris, you said it was similar, and that's presumably because the hill pretty much sets itself for a lot of these races.
Yeah, exactly. The hill does set itself. I mean, we'll see something entirely different when we get to the slalom this afternoon. But with the Super G, it really is. There are only so many turns that you can put in so many sections, and so they might have a little slight variation, but you have to follow the contour of the hill as well.
And the two races in these Super Combined events, really very different, and they have to change the skis, they have to change the rhythm, and of course, different racers prefer different events. And so the mental preparation, do they just get one out of the way and then start thinking about, or when you wake up in the morning, you're already thinking about both races?
This is kind of like your decathlon in some ways. You know, I mean, just to draw a bit of an analogy, this really is the best skier because you're combining a speed event where there are certain athletes who will specialize entirely on the speed event, and that means that they're running a much longer turn. They're going straighter. There's more air in it, and those are their focuses. It's a slower movement all the way along, where slalom is a really fast movement. And we see that the Yeps is moving into second place at this point.
That's right, Nicolas Berezhny still our leader, as we have the home favourite, Chris Williamson. Now, he's had a slightly disappointing Olympics because he was favoured to medal in several of these events, and he was skiing very nicely in the downhill until a crash right towards the end as he flew over hot air and then just lost a bit of control.
He got a little bit in the back seat and ended up on his back at that point, just showing us, first of all, how fast it was. Having a good run here, and this is really his strength. He is more of a speed skier than he is a slalom skier.
Well, pretty close to Berezhny, just 0.2 of a second back. Williamson at the moment, following his guide, Nick Brush, down this Super G course. And you can see the sprays there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting as you watch this whole thing to see how fine. You see the problem for Williamson right there is he got a little squirrely. Got into his inside ski, got twisted coming through that fall-away turn, and that fall-away turn has been one of the biggest turns. These guys have run the same course over and over again, and he dumped a bunch of speed right there.
Well, as you can see, fantastic insight from Chris Waddell. Seconds down on Berezhny, having been much closer at the first checkpoint. As we go back up to the top for Christoph Pretner of Austria. So we just see a very slightly delayed recording of the start, and then we pick up the racers live down this middle part of the course and see them through to the finish, because they go well at set intervals, and so obviously when the first person has still completing their run, the next racer has already gone, and that's sometimes got us into difficulties here with the course holds.
Right, exactly.
Because there have been crashes and people have been flagged, stopped, and then they have to go back to the finish, then back up to the top, and they try and rerun their course the second time around later on.
Exactly, and hopefully we'll avoid that today. And Pretner is 1.34 seconds behind at the interval. Obviously, it's a different interval as well, because you're talking the interval of the Super G, but then we'll have a combined time with the slalom. So this is the first of many intervals, really, is what it comes down to. Coming over hot air right now.
And we see the sun glistening off the top. And as the sun comes into play here, Chris, as we just see Pretner go into third, a second back on Berezhny's time. As the sun comes more and more into the course, how difficult does that make it for these races?
Well, I mean, the sun is actually welcomed by the athletes, because right now they're going in and out of the shadows, which can be one of the more difficult things to do. Your eyes, it takes them a while to focus as you're moving out of the sun into the shadows, and that can be a disconcerting thing when you're going 50, 60 miles an hour, and you're hoping that you want to know exactly where you're going. The sun also will play a huge role in the course conditions. Right now, we can see just how hard it is and how fine the snow is coming off of their skis. As we move on during the day, the course it's wet. There's been a ton of snow. They inject the snow for the Olympics. It's been injected for the Paralympics as well. Then it had rain on it. So the problem is that when it gets warm, it gets really wet. There's just a huge water content in the snow, and we'll see this stuff coming off in sheets.
Now, when you talk about injecting the snow, how does that process work exactly?
It's kind of like the Zamboni over at the hockey rink. Literally, they're taking water and they're injecting it into the snow to create a harder surface, because you don't want to develop holes or bumps or any of those things. You want it to be a relatively smooth surface, and so the harder that surface is, the more it maintains.
Well, Ivan Frantsev of Russia, a fifth racer down, going into fifth place, 2.5 seconds back. And we go back up to Mark Batham, 51-year-old from Seattle, Washington.
And he's out of the course before we even get started.
He is, unfortunately for him. Well, he can content himself at least with the silver medal he won in the downhill, and he looked very pleased until he was displaced from the lead. But a surprising medal for him, you'd have to say. And here's a replay, just seeming to, well, maybe in going into the shadows, didn't see it.
It's kind of interesting that the shadows really might have played a role in these guys. Obviously, are visually impaired to start off with, and then you start playing with the shadows and those kinds of things that can really affect what they see, and by virtue of that, what they do.
That's right. So Andres Boira-Diaz of Spain is the next man down. None of these competitors in the B1 sub-classification, so completely blind with the blacked-out goggles, and you'll see on the B1s in some of the other races the big microphone packs, a lot more communication from the guide to the skier. But of course they are all mic'd up, and they'll have earpieces as well.
Exactly, they will have earpieces as well. And the one B1 skier that we did see was Bart Bunting in the downhill, who had some difficulty and ended up actually straddling a gate, which is something that nobody ever wants to do in a down. I mean, never wants to do ever, but certainly not in a downhill, and he might be feeling the effects of that, unfortunately.
But a special mention to him, because the only B1 racer on the men's and the women's side to just line up in that downhill section, and tremendous courage and bravery needed just to do that.
Amazing athlete, he really is, that's for sure.
So Boira-Diaz of Spain comes down through these final sweeping turns of the Super G course. He'll be followed by his countryman, John Santacana Mazdagui, who we might expect to contend a little bit closer than Boira-Diaz, but...
And you see the guide putting his hand up in that big turn. That's one of the indications oftentimes for these visually impaired athletes, is that you want to be able to communicate the change in the course. So whether it's a big turn, and that's a rhythm change in the course, or a change in the contour of what's going on. So if you're hitting a knoll or something like that, this is the big sweeping fall-away turn that is so important, has been so important all week for maintaining that speed coming onto hot air. You see the guide's hand go up, and he's indicating a different transition from either steep to flat, or from flat to steep, or a big turn as well.
Well, Andres Boira-Diaz well back from our leader, Nicolas Berezhny of France. But this man might get a little bit closer, perhaps quicker still. So John Santacana Mazdagui of Spain, following his guide, Miguel Galindo Garces.
And he is the top-ranked Super G skier in the visually impaired class. For those of you who are seeing the start list, he has a 0, and 0 is the standard. It means that he's won at least 2 World Cup Super G races, The other points are a reflection of how close people have been to him or to the winner in some of those events.
Well, he's a second up nearly on Berezhny at this first checkpoint. And Chris, what happens if one person has only won just the one World Cup event? Do they even up there's no zero for that particular division?
There won't be, because usually they're adding a penalty to whatever, so they figure that out. And sometimes the math, honestly, Mark, is over my head, and I don't know exactly what they do.
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
But yes, there aren't any logarithms or anything, algorithms. So we have Santacana coming through here. Look at that. You can see just how difficult the course is. He's gasping for breath, holding his thighs as he crosses the finish line. This hard, bumpy snow takes so much out of the athletes. It just really does. They're trying to make the turn and trying to maintain contact with the snow throughout, but you have to do so much in a physical manner to be able to withstand the effects of the hill, the effects that the hill is throwing at you. And it's not just the G-forces of making the turn. It's also the bumps and the hard snow where you're trying to make that ski turn.
Well, on course now with Gianmaria Dal Maestro of Italy. And he is very close to Santacana's time, who was himself over 2 seconds quicker than Berezhny come the finish line. So a pretty good run here from Dal Maestro.
He certainly is one of the guys that you look at. You're expecting him to be at or near the top of the podium. He and the guy following him, Jakub Krakow from Slovakia. So we'll see what Dal Maestro can throw down here.
Comes across the finish line and he's into second place. Well, he lost a bit of time down that bottom half, but still a pretty good run and just fantastic conditions for both racers and spectators here, Chris.
Yes, and usually in a Super G, you're done at this point.
Yeah.
Your day is done. Whereas these guys have to start thinking about, okay, let's make the transition to slalom. Most of them will grab a bite to eat, get out, get onto their short skis, make some turns, run some training courses. We have Krakow on course right now, who is definitely one of the people to watch. And look at the turns he's making. He's just laying into it at this point. A lot of other people look a little bit more tentative on the hard snow. He looks like he's just totally getting after it, which is great.
And these two, as you can see, much closer together than some racers and guides. Krakow has 2 golds and a silver so far in the 4 events he's raced. So the Slovakian always in contention and more than a second quicker at this checkpoint than the Spaniard. So Krakow again showing his dominance.
He is, and you can see him grabbing his tuck whenever he can, getting into that aerodynamic tuck, hands out in front, crouched. It's where you're in the best position against the wind. These guys are going 50, 60 miles an hour or so.
And just when you get into that tuck, even for half a second or so, presumably still an advantage, which is why he keeps going into it and then having to turn almost immediately.
It is, exactly. And the thing also is it's a sign of his aggressive nature at this point. He's looking to be aggressive. He's searching for speed. You're at your best when you're searching for speed. You make better turns.
Well, he seemed very happy with that, and he was a second clear in the lead. And as his teammate now,
Nobor Holik, who is on course. The Slovakians showing a strong contingent here.
That's right. And Chris, as you said, they have the slalom this afternoon. They'll be on one of the other hills right now, as soon as they finish getting some training runs, trying to keep loose, trying to keep...
They will. Well, the thing is, they've been making big turns for a long time. They had the downhill, then they had the Super G. Now they have the first run of the Super Combined is a Super G as well, so they've been making big turns to turn your mind, to get into the mindset of making shorter turns, quicker turns. You have to get your mind to do it, and you have to get your body to do it, so they'll go out and they'll train in between.
Now, do they have set other hills where these racers can train, or will they just have to join in with the general population here at Whistler?
No, they'll have closed areas for these guys. It really is. It's not safe to have the training course at the same place as the general public.
Well, Holik comes well back, down in 9th place behind his teammate Jakub Krakow, who again leads the way here at Whistler Creekside. So one more racer and another Slovakian. 3 Slovakians to round out this visually impaired field. And the man you see down here is Miroslav Haraus, following his guide Martin Makovnik. 3rd place in the Super G yesterday for Haraus, so certainly one to watch at least in the morning session.
Exactly. Yeah, and there will be athletes who will be more successful in the speed events than they are in the slalom events. And you can see his guide again putting his hand up, indicating that big turn, change in rhythm in the course.
And pretty close to Krakow's time there, just 0.08 of a second back. So Heraus skiing quickly here.
Yes, he's having a very good run, and this is again one of those turns that makes the big difference. Made a pretty nice turn there, a little bit too much of a move in the beginning of it, but so he lost a little bit of speed, but still looking solid.
Comes down towards the finish now. Miroslav Heraus into second, but lost a fair bit of time. As you mentioned, Chris, a little stumble around those later turns.
Well, that one fall-away turn right before they come over hot air is really the turn that you're going to look at as one of the most important turns. When these guys look at the course, they'll say, that is one that we have to nail, because you come onto the flats, it gets really flat right afterwards, and if you lose speed, you're going to lose, it gets multiplied. So if you lose speed going onto the flats.
So confirmation there, 2 Slovakians and a Spaniard. The top 3 at the halfway stage. We'll see how they do in the slalom later on today.
Yes, go get your short skis, boys, and make some turns.
Okay.
I'm here with Tomas's girlfriend, and I would love for you to introduce the whole team here.
Stop start, right?
They are the supporters team from Italy. They are clients of Tommy. And then the girl from the all together, having a great
Okay. So the course officials and crew here hard at work in between, even when they have a few seconds. We've seen them shoveling the snow, trying to flatten out everything, and it is another glorious day on the mountain.
It is another glorious day, and you see a lot of those course workers with their crampons on, indicating just how hard it is. We've had as a course worker, you don't even have the skis on. You're not in a position where you can dig into this ice. So it's a bit of a tenuous position. These guys are working hard and have prepared wonderful courses for the athletes all week long.
Now, Chris, at the halfway stage, will they be looking at the leaderboard after the Super G and thinking, well, I'm this much behind, this is how much I have to make up? Or will they already be factoring in slalom abilities and thinking, well, I'm kind of possibly 0.8 of a second back, but if you factor in I'm better at slalom, I'm only really 0.3.
They're definitely, because there's some athletes that will be better in Super G versus slalom, and they will look at it and they have an idea of where they sit the whole time. And if somebody has a really good run in Super G, or relative to the other athletes, then they'll be looking at the slalom saying, okay, I have an advantage. If everybody skis about the same that they usually do, then they might end up finishing the same as they usually do. But the thing is, looking at both events, they have a pretty good idea.
So the next of our 6 events today, the first half, of course, the Super G, the first run, combined with a slalom this afternoon, and the 2 times are added up. So just the races ahead of us here in the standing division.
And we look at some of our dominating racers at this point as well. Obviously, this is the class with Gert Schoenfielder, who's been dominating all week long. These conditions completely suit him. When it's hard out there, he is at his best. We certainly look for him. This is Thomas Fiedl in the gate right now, out of Switzerland. A really strong racer on the younger side.
And really, when it comes to the standing division, it is hard to look past Schoenfielder, as you said.
Most definitely. Who's number 26, but that means that he is actually the 14th racer, and this is Fiedl. You can see these guys have run this course a lot. A lot of these turns are very, very similar to the ones that they ran yesterday in the Super G. You don't often get a chance to do that, to run a Super G more than once. The idea of a Super G is that you're looking at the course and then you're running. You get one look at it and then you go race on it. But for this course, you're on this hill. It really does give them a bit of an advantage, and I'm sure a lot of them are going to go at it a whole lot harder now because they feel much more comfortable with the hill, with the set, and knowing where the gates are.
Now, Chris, as we see Thomas Fiedl come down this hill, how many coaches will he have out there on the hill, and where down the hill will they be?
He will probably have 3 or 4 coaches, possibly 5 coaches out there, all of whom will be radioing in information based on the course and how it's working. See him coming into the sunshine now, grabbing a bit of a tuck, and then this is one of the turns that we really want to look at, and one of the ones that they would have looked at while they're going through their inspection. You see that it's developing a few bumps in addition to the fall away, but they want to maintain speed over that flat before they get over hot air.
Well, Feld didn't register a finish in yesterday's Super G, but he has done today in this first half, 1:23.59, and that is the time to beat for now.
He'll have a sense of how he did, but he also will be sitting in the finish line waiting to see just how he did and looking at some of these other athletes.
On course here with Markus Sauker of Austria, who was 8th in yesterday's Super G. And would you expect pretty much yesterday's results largely to be repeated in this first half?
It's pretty likely because a lot of the top skiers ended up in the top positions, though you never know. You never know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to have a great run. Somebody also has gained a whole lot of confidence by virtue of being on this course yesterday and said, okay, now I can really go at it and have the run of my life. You hope that at the big event that things start to come together. So we're looking at Salker here, and he's having a very nice run coming into this big turn.
So he is nearly 2 seconds behind the Swiss racer Furl at this stage, and we'll see how he does as he comes down to complete these big wide sweeping turns and coming towards the second half of his run.
And Field really did have a good run. He's generally one of the top 5 skiers. Salker's a little bit behind Field oftentimes, and so we're looking to see where he'll stack up and then where he can go in the slalom. So almost 2 seconds back.
And we'll be going back up to the top for another Austrian, Hubert Mandl. So here he is. Now he was 4th in the giant slalom, but 3rd yesterday in the Super G. That's his best result so far, so he'll really look to try and use some of that momentum. And he'll have, you would imagine, tremendous confidence, because it is slightly different, as we've said, but pretty similar to yesterday.
But pretty similar. So he's run this course in his mind. He feels really comfortable and has an idea of how fast he's going to be going, how difficult the turns will be in a certain section. He's almost 0.3 of a second behind Field, though. And that's one of the issues is that, each day is a little bit different, and somebody's going to throw down a run. And we see Mandel taking it a little bit deep into that fall away there, maintaining good speed still, though.
Just coming down towards the finish now. 1:23.59 is the time to beat. But it's going to hold up for now. Mandel goes into second, 0.4 of a second behind.
He's shaking his head. A lot of the athletes are not going to feel great on this course. It's the conditions are hard. It's bumpy. They'll be bouncing around the whole time. They'll feel like they're bouncing around more than they look like they're bouncing around to you. With Lionel Brun from Switzerland, from France, actually.
Chris, what's been the general feedback you've been hearing from the athletes as they've been racing on the mountains? Well, this mountain this week, in terms of the course conditions and how things have been set up here.
Well, it's a difficult but fair course. And that's really ultimately what the athletes are looking for. The course workers have kept it in great shape. We're seeing people from the back are able to have as good a run. And we have Lionel Brun, who is having a great run right now, 45/100ths of a second up. One of the things that I like about it is he's taking a lot of energy to this run right now.
Yeah.
See him get a little bit deep and lose a little bit of speed right there. But at the same time, he's bringing a lot of energy. He's brought a lot of energy from the top to the bottom. And that's something that especially when the conditions are difficult like this, you have to bring it to it. And look at, he gained a lot of speed down there, 7,500 or 7,300ths of a second in the lead.
So a very good run from the Frenchman. And we go back up to Hiraku Misawa of Japan. Unable to register a finish in yesterday's Super G.
He's 0.3 out there, but that's pretty solid. Looking pretty strong, and you'll see with these one-legged skiers where he just made that turn there's a big turn that he had to make on what would effectively be his inside ski. Most people don't ski on the inside ski the way that he does because they have 2 skis, and it's generally harder And so you're looking at it, and he's making some of these turns, and you see just how clean he is on that side, and how it's a little bit more difficult for him on the opposite side, making the turn to the right.
Chris, just give a sense of how quickly these athletes are travelling here. I mean, the standing division typically quicker than the sit skiers, and the sit skiers themselves quicker than the visually impaired. But some of these top racers are very much approaching the speeds we saw in the Olympics, aren't they?
They are. A lot of them are. We saw, just as you were asking that, we saw Misawa go through the speed trap, and he went through at 67.7 kilometers an hour. So at that point, he's going in and around, 40 to 45 miles an hour.
And 2 seconds back on Leon Albrat at the moment. But in the downhill, you will see people clocked around the 80s, won't you?
Oh, yeah, 80 miles an hour. Yeah, exactly. Yes. We saw Robert Moosberger from Austria coming through.
And he's another who's been in contention in several races this week from the big powerhouse skiing nation. And when there's an up-and-coming skier, do people think, well, he's from Austria, so he's bound to be good, or he's from South Africa, so he's bound not to be very good?
Hey, come on now. We want to be nice to the South African team. No, exactly. No, I mean there's certain teams that are more likely to put out good skiers, and part of it is you get to see good skiers. You're on the hill and you see a lot of great skiers, and that's something in Austria. The instruction is great, but you see a lot of great people on the mountain, and Moosberger is one of those guys who's been on the team for a long time. These guys are up and coming. If you see. That's one of the things that's a little bit different about the Paralympics, is that we will have success from nations, some skiing nations, and so Moosberger going in 1.3. Success from nations that you wouldn't expect success from. We have Vincent Gauthier-Manuel, also from France.
Well, his teammate leads the way for now.
Exactly.
But he's been very consistent, Gauthier-Manuel, and second in yesterday's Super G.
He looks to be absolutely flying right now.
And you can hear him emitting a few sounds there as he's charging down this course. Not quite like some of the tennis players grunting at every hit they
no, but it's hard work. It really is hard work, and that's one of the things that is kind of a difficulty for these guys. Is that it really, look at that, Gauthier-Manuel up by 95/100ths of a second, which is a ton of time right now.
And presumably, when the speeds that they're hitting, sometimes just clipping these gates, they're going to notice it, aren't they?
Oh, you notice it. It's a slap more than anything. Oftentimes, you're kind of brushing right by these gates, and you end up with these pretty funny looking bruises afterwards, but they hurt. And Gauthier-Manuel, look at that. Wow, what a great run.
A huge margin there, nearly 1.5 seconds up on his teammate, and a very nice run indeed.
You can see he was happy. Now this is an interesting guy. This is Adam Hall, who won the slalom event. The second run of this will be the slalom event. This is Super G, and he wasn't as successful in the Super G yesterday, but he was the top man by a lot in the slalom, to the point where he went down on his hip, popped back up, and still won the race against the best people in the world.
It was a stunning race, that one. So 7th in the Super G yesterday, and presumably he'll just be trying to keep it as close as he can and really try and bring it home then in this afternoon's slalom.
He is, yeah. It's kind of like his anchor leg at that point. He really is looking to set it up in the Super G, and then he's going to bring it home in the slalom. And so he's one of the guys to watch. He certainly is one of the guys that Gert Schoenfielder, who's yet to come, will be watching. And Adam looks to be skiing pretty well. One of the things that you're looking for is you're looking for one clean turn. That's the whole idea. And you see him twisting just a little bit and having to get back on that edge, get off the edge, and then get on the edge. And that's one of the things that won't be as fast at this point. He needs to run a little bit cleaner ski.
Now, he is 4.6 seconds back. How much do you think he needs to pick up if he's really going to be in contention for gold this afternoon?
It's going to be tough. I would think that he would need to be within, 5 seconds is a ton of time. I would think that he would need to be within 3 seconds or so in order to be successful in the combined event.
But of course, with Vincent Gauthier-Manuel having a sizable lead himself, as Hall comes down across the finish line. Well, as you said, 5 seconds is a ton of time, and that's how much he trails. But if the Frenchman does make a mistake, that could open the door.
And you never know. Obviously, he went down on his hip and still pulled out a victory, so So he knows he has it in the bag as far as his slalom is concerned.
Well, we have Alexander Alyabyev of Russia here. 10th in the slalom. Best results so far. So he'll be one of those ones, again, looking to improve this afternoon. But 6.75 seconds back at the moment. So you'd think, even with a quicker slalom run, it's possibly too much for him to be able to get a podium finish. But every one of these racers will want to, particularly those who have entered all 5 Alpine disciplines, they'll want to get an absolutely, well, as good a performance as they possibly can here to really leave the games on a high note.
They want to leave the games on a high note, and I mean, every time you go through the starting gate, you want to put down the best run that you possibly can, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Our leader at the moment.
Now, Toby Kane, the flag bearer from Australia.
And a great Super G skier and somebody who can challenge for the lead. We'll see what he's done. He's had a bit of a tough run at the Paralympics here, but great skier.
And the Australian team has been fairly impressive for a country that's mostly associated with
summer sports.
That's right. They do have some skiing there, and they can hop over to New Zealand, but the ski season is much, much shorter than it is here in North America and also in Europe.
Right. And they spend a lot of time in North America and Europe. Toby Kane, 1.44 out right now, having a decent run. Obviously, Gauthier Emmanuel is up by... Oh, and Toby Kane goes down. Part of where he's trying to generate speed is he's trying to get that ski out away from him. You see him as he comes into the turn, and it's kind of a pendulum type of effect where the ski swings out to the side. His upper body, his mass of weight, is going straighter down the hill, but yet the ski is taking the longer route and catching back up to him. And that's some of what he was trying to do at that point, was just trying to gain a little bit more speed, a little bit more of an angle. Michael Brugger.
Well, Toby looked to have had a bit of a face full of snow there as he slid down quite some way.
He did, and he probably feels like he has a bit of a face full of snow here at Whistler, because I'm sure he came in with much higher expectations and hasn't really been able to find the finish. That's been one of the biggest problems for him.
Yeah. Well, Michael Brugger, as he said, from Switzerland now.
Oh, and Brugger goes down as well. Wow. It happened in a heartbeat. He just leaned in just a little bit.
And just having some communication, but
about where he can exit the course now, because it is all fenced off.
Now, will there possibly be some slight delays while we make some minor repairs to the course here? We'll have to see.
We're seeing what happened at this point. He just put that inside hand in and just leaned in, got the hip into the hill, and it happens so quickly.
Trying to jump around that turn, but unable to do so. So he skis down to the side where he's being held for the moment. And the next one on the course will be another Australian, Cameron Rolls-Rabula.
Cameron and Toby Kane have gone back and forth oftentimes. Cameron is probably slightly more accomplished, has a little bit better results, but we'll see what he's able to do. Toby's had a bit of a frustrating time himself right now, and Cameron has had some results here in the Paralympics. He's been 3rd in the slalom, and 6th in the giant slalom, and 5th in the Super G, and so he is one of those guys that we'll look to, because he's solid in both the Super G and the slalom.
So pretty consistent finishes for him. So it's definitely been leading the way for his team. And Chris, when you were racing, how much of a difference did it make about the performances of your teammates? Was it something of a boost you could look to if you weren't having the best runs yourself? Or did maybe they were able to feel, well, Chris can do it, why can't I? And that you were able to give them a boost? Especially
at big events, you see a lot of sort of teams that will step up together. Somebody has a really good result, and so much of it's believing that you can do well. And if you believe you can do well, you do well. And some of that is seeing somebody that you've trained with all the time do well. And we see Cameron having a great run right now, looking really good. He was out a bit at the interval, but at the same time, sticking with it and is really more of a slalom skier, so he wants to stay as close as possible in the Super G, running a nice clean ski there. See where he's on the inside ski, making the turns to the right, and his traditional outside ski making the turns to the left, so it's a little bit cleaner on the turns to the left. But some of these guys will actually make a better turn on the turn that you didn't anticipate. So he's out by 2.77, and he needs to stay relatively close. He's in the same boat as Adam Hall, where he is more of a slalom skier. You see him getting a little bit low as he came into that big follow-away turn, and he's losing a little bit of speed, a little bit of air, going over hot air.
And just alternating with those outriggers there as he puts them together for aerodynamic purposes towards the finish, but still 3.82 seconds back. So perhaps a little bit too far out of contention as we see Monty Meyer of the United States burst out of the gate.
Picking him up midway. These athletes are on a 40-second interval, which means that one athlete will be on the course, will be finishing the course as the other has already started.
We have to thank our television broadcast partners for the great job they do in giving us a very slightly delayed recording of the start and then picking it up live later down the hill. So Monty trying to see what he can do in this Super G. He was back in 27th yesterday, but 8th in the slalom on Monday, so he'll be just looking to keep it close if he can.
He's kind of finessing his way down a little bit through some of those sections. Wasn't bringing a lot of power to it, and so that's something that for Monty, if he's able to bring that power to it, he's able to bring a little bit more speed. But he's kind of just sort of standing in the middle of the ski, making the direction change as opposed to really making something happen, and that's the difference between somebody who's going to be at the top of the Super G standings and somebody who's going to be more in the middle of the field.
And Chris, to those less knowledgeable than yourself, it would seem, well, twice as difficult to ski on just the one leg, because everything is focused through, that sole knee joint and the hip.
And here's Gert Schoenfielder. It really is. I mean, I think that some of these things, and look at Gert here, and Gert is taking it to the course as you expected. Looks really, really strong. But it is more difficult in a lot of ways to ski on one leg. I mean, most people would be, and Gert is up by 0.9 of a second at the interval here.
It is, of course, taken into account with the factoring system and all the different sub-classifications within this standing division.
Gert going a little bit too straight right there and making a mistake in a place where you don't want to make a mistake. He's coming onto the flats after a big mistake. He was leading by 0.9 of a second.
So let's see if he's able to keep some of that lead. Well, no, as you said, Chris, he did drop a lot of time towards the end there.
You see him just going a little bit too straight in that one section through his skis sideways as he approached that big follow-away turn, and then went in a little bit too straight again into that follow-away turn and didn't carry much speed onto the flats.
But just 0.22 seconds back and very much in contention for this afternoon.
I think they'll notice that Gert's within striking distance. We have Loska on course right now from the Czech Republic. He's having a nice run.
Another one of the skiers who's been in all 5 disciplines. And is it the case that earlier in your career that you might perhaps enter everything and then specialise, or it just depends on your technique?
You aren't getting too many people who are specialising. Some people who are specialising, especially some of the bigger teams, they're limited as far as quotas are concerned. So you can only have 3 athletes in each event, and that means that there will be a specialisation. But on the World Cup, all these guys are running all the events. We see Loska coming into that big turn there.
So that national quota doesn't apply other than at these international competitions, right?
Exactly, yes. And people will have to qualify for the World Cup. They have to establish points, FIS points that qualify them for the World Cup, and so they have to be fast enough. But no, there's not a quota.
Well, that is still our leader, Vincent Gauthier-Manuel of France. As we go back up to Gakuta Koike,
who is from Japan. And the Japanese, you were asking that question about teams that start skiing well together, and if you're pushed by your team. And I think we've seen a lot of that in Japan. We've had some great results from some of the Japanese skiers. And when one of your buddies starts skiing fast, you start believing that you can ski just as fast because you've been right there with him in training. And that's something maybe we'll see this out of Koike.
And we've also seen a lot of the Japanese racers, very good friends as well. So when they do get on the radios to relay information back to the top, they're not holding anything back. They want their buddies to do just as well as they've done.
They do, and Koike made a huge mistake right there. Went too straight in exactly the place that you don't want to do it. And that one delay that goes all the way across the hill and drags you down the hill. That was the mistake that he didn't want to make, and it'll show up here.
That's right, almost starting again halfway down the course. And
it really is. And you can see him just sort of hanging his head, wondering why he made that mistake. And these things happen so quickly on the mountain. That's why you look at the course, you inspect it, you memorize it as they're looking at it at the top. They're going over it turn for turn in their mind. We see Matt Hallett from Canada. He's struggling a little bit there. See if he can get it together. Some of this, you're working a bit of a side hill at that point. And timing is so important as to, and then he's down on his hip. And like we've seen with a lot of racers at this point, with the snow being this hard, you lean in just a little bit, and you're looking to, the thought in your mind is you're looking to make just a little bit more of a turn. You're looking to make a quicker turn. And in doing that, you often lean in, get your way into the hill as opposed to being directed into the ski. And what happens is, you just go into the hill. The ski slides out from underneath you because it doesn't have the weight on the ski.
Well, we've had a slightly disappointing games from the Canadian men. Much better on the women's side. There have been some men, of course, who've done well, but Chris Williamson, we saw earlier,
right,
he was favoured to do perhaps better than he's done. And have to remember, for all the stunning performances we've seen, there's also some disappointments that don't obviously get the headlines, but those athletes will remember them, and they'll go back and dwell on those, and hopefully, or we hope, and I'm sure they do as well, to come back stronger in 4 years' time.
Well, that's exactly it, because you can't have winners in some ways without losers, and you can't have surprise winners without people who are supposed to win who didn't win. And that's the beauty of this game, is that it's kind of a clean slate. You show up and you can do whatever you want to do, and some people are going to step up, and other people are going to proverbially choke at that point, and sometimes you set a standard too. When you achieve success, you expect success, and we'll see that in some of the athletes. We've seen it in some of the athletes already. We've seen it in the Gert Schoenfielders and the Martin Braxenthalers and some of these guys who win all the time, and they're convinced every time they go to the starting gate that they're going to win. Martin France, about 8 seconds back at this point. He'll have a difficult time making up that difference in the slalom.
But at the same time, while they've dominated in years gone past and still continuing to dominate here, they still have to do it every single race. And these other athletes won't be giving an inch. They certainly won't be handing them the gold.
No, exactly. No, but it's kind of like the old Wild West thing at this point. It's like you're trying to earn your way. You're the gunslinger at this point, and you're trying to earn your way, and there's only one way to earn your way. It's to take out the guy at the top.
That's right. Well, we have 3 more races before we can wrap up the first half of the standing division for the men. This, the Super G, of course, and we have a slalom this afternoon.
We have Kevin Wermeister from Germany on course right now. And let's see where he's losing that edge just that little bit. You really want to drive that edge into the snow and drive it through and back underneath you is one of the things that sort of floats away, and then you drive it back underneath you. And he's about 10 seconds out at this point, which is a bit too much to make up in the slalom.
You would think, barring an absolutely miraculous set of events, but the German coming down now. We can hear the bells ring. The crowd will pick up their roaring, although, as we've said before, he won't really be able to hear them until he finishes. So Wermeister comes down to close out his Super G run and goes into 16th position. So not too happy. And we see the second last racer here, Andrzej Szczesny of Poland.
And you can hear that the snow has not softened at all at this point. It really is a bit of a struggle for these athletes. It'll be so different for the slalom, and that's one of the things. So look at Chesney here, skiing well up top. The top 15 athletes, the fastest athletes will be in the top 15. The athletes behind are seated on fist points, so they're seated basically on world ranking. So you'll expect that the athletes further back will be slower than the athletes in front. That's basically the way it works as you're trying to work your way up that ladder and get to the top. Chesney is the second to last athlete, so he's one of those athletes who's trying to work his way up to the top.
Now, how quickly are those standings updated? Because in some sports, certainly, once you're in the top group, you stay in the top group for the season, and so it can be hugely important to qualify. As we see Chesney go, 15th for now.
It's a bit of a challenge, as there are 2 or 3 points lists that come out during the ski season. This is Bruce Warner.
So if you just manage to squeeze your way in or fall out of it, it can make a huge difference to the next few races.
It really can. It can mean the difference between going first and going 16th. And that often can be a difference can be a huge performance difference based on the conditions. We see Bruce Warner making his way down here, skiing pretty well.
Well, I mentioned South Africa as one of the lesser winter sport nations, but certainly no offence meant. And Bruce, the only athlete here from his country, proudly carried the flag at the opening ceremony last week.
And he's been carrying the flag for South Africa for a long time. He's one of those guys who has taken it upon himself to go and train elsewhere to try to work his way up the world rankings. He's spent a ton of time in Winter Park, lives in Switzerland now, has been able to ski in a variety of different places. One of the nicest guys out there, and that is the hard part. I mean, as true to your point, that there are certain nations that have a winter tradition, a winter Olympic and Paralympic tradition, but when you're doing it on your own, it makes it much, much more difficult. You have to go find all that, and you see Bruce coming across the finish line. 6.55 seconds back. Not a great run, but not a bad run at the same time for Bruce, and he'll come into the slalom, certainly soaking up his Paralympic experience right now, enjoying the cheers.
Well, we'll see confirmation now of the leaders at the halfway stage. Vincent Gauthier Manuel of France, 0.2 of a second ahead of the German Gert Schoenfielder, who you know is lurking there in second place, and another Frenchman, Leon Aubrin, in third.
Yeah, the French really skied well. It's great skiing from them.
Absolutely. Okay, start. So, Chris, as we go into the sitting division for the men's super combined, who are some of the athletes we should be looking for here?
Well, we've seen some great performances from the Japanese skiers. We saw them in the first and third positions on the podium yesterday. Takimori, who's going to be starting it out, will be somebody that we'll definitely look at. His teammate Akira Kano will be the third athlete out of the gate. We certainly never will discount Martin Braxenthaler, because he is the guy to watch in any monoski event. Some of the others, Chris Devlin Young from the U.S. was just 0.02 of a second out of the medals, out of the podium yesterday, off the podium. Suzuki has skied well from Japan. Shannon Dallas, Raini Sample. There are a wide variety of different athletes, but I think that really we're going to look at the Japanese athletes, and we're going to look at Martin Braxenthaler right now.
We saw some of the coaches as we just panned up the side of this hill.
And certainly Josh Dewick, who's out second. We want to look at the Canadian skier as well. Sorry for overlooking our great Canadian skiers.
Well, we saw lots of smaller Go Josh flags and banners down below, but still in the grandstand there, the Stars and Stripes taking pride and place at the back. The huge flag there.
Yes, exactly.
Still don't know how the local fans have allowed that, but
I don't know. I think that the Canadians are just such nice and polite people that they might be too accommodating at this point. Certain places that might not have happened.
mentioning no countries.
No, exactly. No, and it'll be interesting, mentioning the Stars and Stripes, it'll also be interesting to watch Heath Calhoun, who is a really relatively new skier to the U.S. team, has had some great results, is a war veteran.
That's
and
right.
We're starting to see more and more of that now, and we'll probably see an infusion of these guys returning from Iran or from Iraq and Afghanistan to come into the sport, and because veterans have been such a huge part of Paralympic sport back starting in 1948.
That's right, and particularly depending, of course, what divisions they were in, but they'll have extraordinarily high fitness levels to start with,
Exactly.
which will give them a huge boost for that side of things, and obviously they then have to adapt to the whole ski racing element, which is huge. But in terms of high level performance and maintaining that over several days, they'll already be right up there.
Exactly. We see Takimori coming out here, and he is skiing absolutely fabulously. This is amazing skiing. See him catching some air coming onto that pitch there. He is skiing so well. And the thing that I really like is just how clean he is in finishing his turn. One of the things that you'll watch with a monoskier is whether the tail breaks away at the end of the turn. And Takimori is running such a clean ski. He'll get a little bit of a pivot or a skivet, as they talk, right there at the top of the turn. But then he runs such a clean arc at the bottom, and you see just one line in the snow. That is fast.
It's amazing these skis don't break with the extreme pressures that is focused through the rig, which typically weighs about how much?
The rig will weigh somewhere between 30 and 40 pounds, depending on the model of the rig. So no, I mean, the skis that they're on, luckily these guys are able to get some pretty good skis from their ski manufacturers. They're basically running World Cup skis, and so these aren't the kind of skis that you're going to buy in the ski shop. You're not getting Super G or downhill skis for the most part, but he is running super well. Look at that. Just such a clean run. Absolutely phenomenal. The Japanese have taken BC, the Japanese monoskiers certainly have taken BC by storm.
A 1:20.62 seconds. We see some of his fans there.
Working on their tan.
Yep.
Japanese contingent. See what Josh Dewitt can do. He is the hometown boy that they're looking to.
So because it is just the one ski for these sit skiers, they'll be specially manufactured for this division because there's that many forces going through.
Oh no, not specially manufactured for this division. No. Actually, these are they're skis that these are downhill and Super G skis, or they're running Super G skis today. So they're regular manufacture. The beauty of it for a monoskier is that you get a pair, and you have both your race ski and your training ski.
Oh, okay, all right. My mistake. I was just misunderstood you there, but
oh, that's okay. It happens all the time. Sure, it's my fault. So we have Josh having a pretty good run here. He is 6.73 seconds behind Takimori, which is a long ways back, but Takimori also had a really, really good run. We'll see if Josh can make up a little bit of time. This is where he needs to be smart, and he ran it a little too straight right there, so he's going to lose a little bit more time.
comes down towards the finish. One of the local favourites here at Whistler, and Josh Dewick, well, picked up a fraction down that bottom section, but still 6 seconds behind Takimori.
And when you look at the course, you're going to look at certain sections on the course. And here's Kano, who won yesterday. So we're expecting big things from him as well. But you'll inspect certain, you'll really look to certain turns as a turn that you really have to make a good turn. That turn right before hot air is one of those turns. A couple of these turns coming down here where the hill is falling away. You see this? Where the hill is falling away from them, they're going through the bumps. Those are some of the turns that you're really going to want to make some good turns. And you see Kano just lean in just a little bit, got his bucket on the snow.
And after yesterday's performance, he'll be desperately disappointed.
He will, though he does have a medal in the bank. He has a gold medal in the bank at that point. So I think that's gonna he's gonna find a little comfort in that.
Yeah. Well, there we just see the replay. And we have, of course, 5 events here in the Alpine and 6 divisions in each one of them. So 30 gold medals up for grabs.
We'll see Jürgen Egli coming up next. Egli was the leader after the first run of the slalom. ended up going out in the first run of the slalom. He has one more opportunity. Sorry, good point. He won the first run. He went out in the second run of the slalom. He has an opportunity for another second run of the slalom today, but he has to do one run of Super G first. So let's see if he can keep it close enough to really attack and hopefully vindicate himself for that fall in the second run of the slalom in the actual slalom.
Well, the Japanese have had a very good games. We saw their sledge hockey team in the final. They'll be playing later today against the United States team.
They had a tremendous win over Canada, who was the favored team coming in as the number one team. And we see Kino sitting there probably running through the course, and the mistake just kind of leaned his shoulders into the hill just that little bit, and especially when you're going along that side hill. And it's a pretty good pitch there, too. There's not much room for error.
Now, just another point about that, Chris. We talked about teammates here in the Alpine divisions being able to help themselves, help each other with their good performances, and those kind of carrying on to their teammates. Now, with the Japanese sledge hockey team doing so well, obviously based in Whistler, these skiers and the sledge hockey team down in Vancouver, but they'll be very much aware of what's going on. Will that make an effect as well, or less of an effect at the winter games? Because, of course, you've competed both summer and winter.
No, I think so. I think that there's excitement. You're on the team, and the funny thing is that these guys do not get a chance to travel together most often. Maybe you'll see each other at some camps or some events or something like that here and there. Jürgen Egli coming into the gate, but you're all part of that same team, and so I'm assuming they'll get a chance to see them on television or something like that. And if they get a chance to see them on television, they're all rooting for it because they're all in the Japanese team, and they're excited and looking for them to knock off the U.S. And the U.S. athletes are probably looking for the U.S. to knock off Japan. And we have Egli starting at the top here. You see a couple of holes just developing even in that very first gate. So there's nothing easy about this course. You get into it, and it's challenging you right from the start.
Well, he's won a medal in all his 3 previous games, but yet to pick up one here. So this is his last attempt.
Today's his day, then. This is the way to work, and we'll see what he can do. Egli is a tremendous slalom skier. You can see that he's already given away 2 seconds in the Super G portion of it, and he's still up at the top. So he really needs to stay as close as possible. He needs to stay in what you call striking distance so that he can have a chance to take a run at it in the second run. Takimori has laid down a huge lead at the bottom, had just a tremendous run, and I don't know if anybody's going to be able to rival him. Let's see Egli coming through here, looking good through this section. It really is. It's so important in Super G to maintain all that momentum as you come off the pitch onto the flat, because on the flat you just start losing speed. He's lost a bit more at this point, 4.06 seconds.
So he will be trying just to hang on here, because we know how good he is in the slalom, and he'll get a chance to try and eat back up some of that time in the second run this afternoon. We've got 21 competitors for you today in this men's sitting division, as the Austrian comes down to see how far behind Mori's time he is. Well, 4.81, and
he's got his work cut out for him at this point. That's going to be a tough one. He's looking at the board and he's smiling and shaking his head at the same time.
But no matter how well he does, he's probably still going to need a bit of help from the Japanese.
Well, possibly, yeah, a bit of help from the Japanese. And here's Chris Devlin Young, who finished, as we said, just 2/100ths of a second off of. Whoa, and he's having a bit of a problem there. Got his ski sideways. Chris runs such a clean ski, similar to Takimori, and he goes so fast in so many sections. The hardest part for Chris is keeping up with the ski and keeping in front of the course. You really want to stay ahead of the course, and he's 3 seconds back right now, and that's mostly as a result of that problem that we saw right there, where his ski came across the hill and he slowed down quite a bit. And you see him doing exactly the same thing there.
And when you do lose,
going too straight and just barely making it by that outside gate.
When you do lose a bit of time, it does, of course, have that knock-on effect, because all the acceleration's gone. You have to almost, well, not quite start again, depending on how much you've dropped.
Whoa!
Wow. A nasty little fall there, as he just clipped the final gate.
Yeah, not sure exactly what happened. Looked like he might have broken his outrigger off, and wow. He's up. He's up and getting the cheers from the crowd. we'll have to see if he made it around that gate. That's going to be the big question. And you can see just how quickly things can go out of balance. He hit a few little bumps there and actually made a turn where he didn't need to make a turn, and that was just because he hit those bumps and ended up getting pushed out, getting caught onto an edge. And so next we see Hans Plage from Switzerland.
And as we see Plage come down here, what's the ruling on whether he will have made that gate? Because he did seem to certainly, take it out of its moorings, but if he gets the ski past it cleanly, and if he takes it out with one of his outriggers, and here we see Plage getting flagged here because of that little crash.
In the finish, exactly. And so that's unfortunate. He needs to go back to the top. You can see him kind of shaking his head and get started again. For Chris, he needs to get the ski on the outside, in between. They're the two flags. Mm-hmm. And you need to have the ski go in between those two flags.
But if he then takes it out with his outrigger, that doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter at all. And actually, at that point, he's allowed to lose his ski within the last couple of gates. And we'll see what happens here and see if we get a chance to see. So he's in great shape at this point.
He was.
And then hits a little bump, and you can see he gets stuck on his other edge. And it looks like he made it just based on where the ski went. And where he went. Everything,
because it goes right into the pole, but then flew over to the right-hand side as we look. So it must have hit it and then gone that side.
It looks like he made it, though. We need a little bit more super slow-mo, and I don't think we're going to get that from our feed at this point.
So he will register a time, if that is the case.
And he's second right now. He's sitting in second place. We'll see what happens, and we'll see if he gets to run the slalom portion of the course. You can see here some of the coaches and officials from the U.S. team who are on the radio right now, asking what happened, how do we approach this.
That's right.
We want to keep our guy in the race.
Whether he gets to run it, whether he's well enough to run it.
Exactly. Oh, he's a tough guy, no doubt about it. He's going to run it. He's taking bigger hits than that.
Is there one crash that you remember in your racing career that really well?
Similar to Chris's, actually, in that one. It was a race in Breckenridge, and there was a big hole at the bottom. I hit the hole and ended up getting locked on an edge, kind of similar to the way that he did, and I went straight into the fence. And I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm going to fall in the fence at this point, and literally took the fence more like a ramp, went off the fence. There was a lot of soft snow, which was good for me, but I did sort of a sideways flip and ended up on the third fence in. So they have the A net, the first net, the B net, the C net. I landed on the C net, and
the third of three.
And that's but it's similar to exactly what these guys are doing. I mean, the conditions, sometimes you get locked on an edge, and it can take you in exactly the wrong place, and that's why this netting is here as well. Is that it's here for everybody's safety, and things can happen so quickly. You don't want to see anybody going into the woods.
And we do see everything being repaired. Of course, when the netting is taken out, that's all put back into position, and we see the course, little bumps and holes created by any crash will equally be repaired, because of course they don't want the same thing happening again. And we've seen throughout this week that final slope, a lot of people have trouble, not just before the finish, but sometimes right after the finish line as well.
Oh, there were a lot of crashes right after the finish line. And part of this is the conditions. You have a little bit softer conditions, nobody will have a problem.
So we see the slipper there. Chris, just explain what her role is.
Her role is literally to slip through the course, and so they will be going sideways through the course, slipping it, smoothing it out and everything.
Just trying to take off that top layer and brush it off to the side.
Just to kind of smooth things out a little bit.
Wow, well, to go through the finish that way and be 4 seconds out, you would have won it by probably 7 seconds, honey.
Getting a little insight on the camera there.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm going to go.
Well, not quite 4 seconds out, 3.39. But it will certainly have cost him, a large amount of time with that crash through the line. As we go back up top, and Cyril Moret of France will get things back underway here.
Okay, and as we were talking about the team thing, a couple of his teammates in the standing class skied really very well. Moret might well have started that ball rolling in his second run of the GS, where he came from way back and put a whole lot of pressure on the early leaders, on the first run leaders.
That's right. Finished just out of the medals in 4th place. So again, this is it for him. Today is the last day of racing here. If he wants to return with a nice prized possession, he's running out of chances.
He is. This is it. This is his last day. So let's see what he can do. He looks like he's skiing relatively well up here. He's not going to, in my mind, he's not going to rival or threaten Takimori's time. Getting a little bit sideways there, and that's where, when you make a move like that, it takes so much longer to build that speed back up again. Coming into the all-important section down here.
And still pretty good conditions for racing.
Oh, great conditions. They really are great conditions, and you can hear how it still is soft, or still is pretty hard, sorry. It will get softer as the day goes on, and I am guessing that the conditions are going to seem like you've gone from January for the first run to late March, early April for the second run when they run their slalom.
And we have to say, Chris, the decision taken last weekend to completely rejig the program, it was a brave one,
yes.
But as we come to the last day, it definitely was the right one, because Monday and Tuesday, as Moray just comes down to the finish line here, we'll see how far back he is. Well, 3.5 seconds back of Moray's time, but Monday and Tuesday, terrible conditions, but they decided to run the technical events, the slower events, the slalom and giant slalom, and that, certainly with hindsight, turned out to be a great thing, because they wouldn't have been able to run the other events then, would they? No,
exactly. And that's where the officials and the course workers have been able to scramble and make things happen. This is Thomas Nolte from Germany on course right now. And he's a strong super combined skier. He is one of the top ranked skiers. The top ranked skier is his teammate Martin Braxenthaler, who has the 0 in this event.
And also was 4th in the downhill. That's his best result so far at these Paralympic Games.
You can see him bouncing around a little bit in there in those little bumps.
And you've mentioned before what an advantage it must be just to be on the same team as Braxenthaler, to try and pick his brains whenever he can for a bit of an extra edge, whether it's mental or preparation. So many different aspects to ski racing.
Skiing is a sport that you learn in a variety of different ways. People can teach you, they can tell you what to do, but I've always found that you learn as much by watching as you do anything else, and that's one of the things that Nolte has in his favor, is that Martin Braxenthaler is his teammate and he can watch him do things really well. So Nolte, unfortunately, not quite in the same league as Braxenthaler right now, 7.23 seconds out. Going to mean that he will need to have a really fast slalom run.
That's right. Now, obviously, we're bringing these pictures to our viewers from all around the world, and they can learn a certain amount from this, but is it important for budding racers out there to get on the slopes and really ski down following their competitors or people that they'd aspire to be like? Do you pick up that much more there rather than just off the TV?
Oh, I think so. I think the more you can be in close proximity to somebody, and the more you can follow them, the less you actually have to think yourself. You get into this sort of kinesthetic awareness. You teach your body how to move and how to work. Sean Rose on course from Great Britain, who is a speed skier. He's had a bit of trouble thus far, losing his ski. Oh, I feel like I jinxed him again. I apologize, Sean.
Well, the trouble continues, unfortunately, for Sean.
And, a lot of this, it's representative of the athletes pushing themselves well beyond. They're seeing the standard that Takimori set.
Yeah.
They saw the standard that Kano and Mori and Martin Braxenthaler set yesterday. They know just how fast they have to go. And sometimes going that fast is a little bit faster than they're able to go. They take a few more risks. And this is what happens when you take some risks sometimes.
That's right. And it's been a frustrating games for Sean, one of the leaders of the British Alpine team, and not able. Well, you can see how frustrated he is.
Yep.
Well, and the coach as well.
A lot of head shaking going on right now. That's the hard part, because you have high hopes.
You do.
And you have high hopes for the next 4 years, really, and sometimes this is how you're able to get the support that you need for the next 4 years.
Yeah. So the Austrian Philippe Benadiman will be the next man out of the gate, number 43. And we're about halfway through this field now. Before we complete the men's side of things and get onto the women.
Almost sounds like a plane taking off when you listen to it. It really is. It's kind of exciting. And skiing, there's so much energy involved in skiing well, and it's such a beautiful sport as well. So you watch these racers doing it at the very top, and you can see just how many racers are having trouble in that one section as they come off of that little bit of a side hill. There are bumps. Banataman had trouble there as well as some of the others. This is another place where they've been having difficulty, and you start seeing this, and this is where the coaches are going to radio up saying, coming off of that first pitch on that little side hill there, don't get inside, really stay square, really keep those shoulders down the hill, keep the hip into the hill, and stay square on that. And then also it's going to come up a little bit quickly when you come onto that little bit of a flat there, and that's a place where you can make up a ton of time. So benefit to some of these racers who are running a little bit later. Banataman is having a really good run though.
That's right, but still Taiko Mori's time, well, 2.31 seconds in the lead at this stage. He was the first racer down, and it's still holding up pretty well.
It's holding up really well, and there's a good reason for that, because he skied really well. He was really fast in that run, and we'll see this is another one of those turns where Banataman made a very nice turn, maintained a lot of that speed coming over the flats, hitting hot air, bringing it into the finish.
Now, he was third in the slalom, so if he can keep it reasonably close, he'll certainly fancy his chances, and he has kept it close. Didn't lose much more down the second stretch there, so 2.42 seconds behind. And as I said, a bronze medal in Monday's slalom, so he'll want to do well this afternoon in the second run.
So moving in now, we have Johan Taberlet from France.
And judged on his performances this week, 9th in the Super G, but 24th in the slalom. So he'll want to make his mark in this morning's run. And we'll just see a combination of that. People who will be higher up the leaderboard, but they'll know that this is their better event.
No, exactly. And they know that they need to make some time. He made a nice turn there. This is where some of those people have been having trouble. Skied right through it without a problem. But there was a little jostling still. Little of those bumps that keeps pushing you along. This is another one where needs to make a nice turn. Right here. You can see where they get a little bit of air coming onto this section, and then they really have to be ahead of the course and know that they have a turn to maintain the speed across the flats.
You can see how important the suspension of these rigs is as they skip around these corners.
It really is. You want to keep the ski on the snow as much as possible, and the shock absorber is what allows you to do that. It allows you to keep the ski on the snow.
So without that shock, how would it run? You'd just be bouncing all over the place.
Oh, it'd be absolutely miserable, because something has to absorb those bumps. And Taberlet at this point is 5.23 seconds back. He's not having a great run. He's having a pretty good run, but not a great run, and not the run that he needs, because he is a stronger speed event skier than he is a slalom skier. A pretty decent turn there through the fall-away.
So the Frenchman getting a little bit of air there as we come down towards the finish line. We'll see how he does as he crosses 126.69, well, 6 seconds back of our leader, and into 7th place at the moment. Now this is a man who's always a threat, Martin Braxenthaler. First in the slalom, first in the giant slalom, and second in the Super G, so all eyes are going to be on him.
Yes, he's a guy. He's the man you have to contend with at all times, that's for sure.
So we'll see. Well, we've seen Mori's time hold up very well so far, but if anyone's going to threaten it, this is the man. So
this is the man, yeah. And we'll see what happens with Braxenthaler here. He's strong through that section. And I think he had a little bit of trouble getting into the course just at the beginning.
So Mori maintains the lead, and we'll see if Braxenthaler is able to chip away at that, or whether in fact it goes the other way.
Exactly. And you see where again that's that difficult turn. Made a pretty good move on it, but still not really challenging Mori's time. So we'll see, because Braxenthaler is the guy who's setting the standard. We'll see where he is when we come to the interval time.
And really, well, gold medal in the slalom, but with a silver medal in the Super G. Hard to say that the slalom is his better event when he's still so good at the Super G, but look at this. Nearly 3 seconds back.
That is absolutely amazing. It is mind-boggling. It looked like Martin was having a little bit of trouble getting into the course, getting into the rhythm of the course, and which is uncharacteristic. But sometimes that's just the way things go. Some days are better than other days. He's been racing for the last 3 days,
and unless he does something down here, it could perhaps be too much to make up. But Braxenthaler, fierce competitor, down he comes. And well, 3.2 seconds, that's going to be very tough.
Into third place. He's looking over at the scoreboard right now, and the Germans are happy, but I don't think that Martin Braxenthaler is happy right now because he's left himself a whole lot of work to do.
Absolutely.
As he approaches the slalom. This again is one of the strong Japanese team. This is Takeshi Suzuki.
So he will, we imagine, have had some pretty good information relayed back to him from the leader. Certainly.
And they ski very, very similarly. All three of the Japanese skiers. The other two are paraplegics, where Suzuki is an amputee, but they ski really similarly. They're using the same mono ski. He's 2.5 seconds out, and you can see he's not quite on the same level. Wow, and got some pretty good air there.
And that's pretty much the first jump we've seen up there. He was soaring.
He was, most definitely. And luckily he had the right direction, or else it could have become really ugly. But he doesn't quite have the same energy that Takemori had. Yeah. You saw the energy coming out of the ski of Mori, and how he was running a really long, slow, how he was running this turn similar to that, but how Mori was linking them the whole way down. And so you just had this sense of building pressure, building speed throughout the whole thing, and you're not getting quite that same sense with Suzuki, who's having a very good run, just not a run that's going to challenge the top of the podium.
So as he comes down, well, as you said earlier, Chris, you always want to have the ski in contact with the snow at all times, so nice to watch for the spectators seeing that soaring over the jump. But there he comes down. Much
but
flatter
not always
on that
fast.
one.
Exactly.
Yeah, not always as fast. So Suzuki well behind his teammate and into 6th place.
He's happy though.
He is. And look at that replay. Well, pretty much in control. Fairly nice landing. And congratulations from his teammate as we see Carl Bennett now. So, Chris Waddell, as well as being a Paralympic legend, he's also a Paralympic ambassador, and he has many, many commitments. So he's, unfortunately for us, and you had to pop out, but he will be back in the commentary booth later as the American Carl Bennett comes down in his first run of the day. And unfortunately for him, that's going to be it. Okay. Picking it up with. Do you want to just pause and eat that?
No.
You sure? Or do you want to go to the end of? We could go to a few minutes down, and I could just do this in the gap. If you want to get going, because 36 minutes is going to be overrun a little bit.
Is it okay? Yeah. Let's. Okay, that's fine with me. Okay, so you want to just run the rest of it then?
Well, no, I was going to say pick it up a little bit later, so we have 28 minutes for you instead of 36.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I'm going to pick it up at the start. I'm forgetting which way around we are. Jean back.
This is Corradini.
Yeah, so that's that one. So should we pick it up at the start of the... Okay, so we're just going to have that one. I think that's good because you've got to get a ton of stuff. Okay, 20 minutes. So she won't be. She doesn't ski. She crashes, but she does start. Okay. Yep. Well, apologies to all our viewers that you've had to suffer the last little bit of commentary with just me, Mark Dryatt, but fortunately for me and for you, Chris Waddell is now back.
Glad to be back in the booth, Mark. Thank you.
So, Chris, we have one more event here in the first half of this Super Combined, which is, of course, the Super G, and it's the women's sitting division. The Super Combined, of course, a combination of one Super G run and one slalom, which we'll see this afternoon, and it's just total time combined. So
total time combined, and we did get a chance to see a couple of the players right there. We saw Claudia Loesch from Austria first, and then we saw Laurie Stevens. They will be two of the athletes that we're looking for. Obviously, Elena Nichols was second in the Super G to Claudia Loesch yesterday. We're looking to her. Stephanie Victor, one of the strongest slalom skiers in the world. We will look to her as well. Koniko Obanada went out in the downhill, unfortunately, and so we will not get a chance to see her ski. But we will get a chance to see her teammate, Tatsuko Aoki.
That's right, who also crashed, but not nearly as badly.
Exactly.
And Obanata listed on the start list, but as we said, we won't be seeing her today. She was in hospital overnight for observation, but the latest information that we had was that she is okay, which is good to hear. So the first athlete in this division will be Alana Nichols of the US, as you can see on your screen. She will get ready for the countdown.
Come on, Lena. 5. Come on, Lena. 4. Up.
And just to explain, you heard her go on about 3 of the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but the time just starts when they break the starting gate.
Yes, and you're actually allowed to go anytime after 3, from 3 to -3.
And after that, at -3, the clock starts anyway.
I think so, exactly. So you see Elena kind of making some nice turns up here. It is bumpier. She's struggling a little bit up top. And then actually that same turn that we've seen the men having difficulty on, she went down on that turn and has actually come to a complete stop and is getting back up.
Well, she's still on the course, so the clock is running. She hasn't crashed out, of course, but this won't be helping her time.
No, this most definitely will not help her time. But you can see that same difficult section. And then another difficult turn coming up right here. We'll see how she does.
And still bumping around here.
Yes, exactly. It is bumpier, and it's a little bit harder still. Even though it's later in the morning right now, it's still hard. And that's something that these women aren't quite used to as much right now. Yesterday they were running a little bit later in the day.
And Chris, just to explain, what is the most likely cause of a crash here? Is it losing control of the ski? Is it perhaps catching the front ski if you have a bit of air?
The biggest thing that we've seen thus far is leaning into the hill. And we've seen a lot of it in the exact same place that we saw it from Elena.
Touching the snow with the bucket and just
with
skidding
the
out.
Bucket, and the problem is that you're leaning in with the shoulders as well, so the bucket's hitting and the shoulders are hitting and you end up going down. Whereas if your shoulders, or if your inside shoulders up and forward, you're much more likely to kind of ski out of that kind of a position.
We've also seen several people catch gates with their outriggers as well, which has spun them around. So lots of potential for mishap, unfortunately, but that's downhill racing. Well, Alpine racing.
It's the way it goes, and she is in the finish. So we'll see how that stacks up. A lot of things can happen with one run of Super G and one run of slalom. With Claudia Loesch, who set the standard with a tremendous Super G run yesterday. Can she match that? She's riding high after yesterday, and the question is, can she match it?
That's right. Gold in the Super G, gold in the slalom, in the individual events. So on paper, she is the favourite.
She is the favourite, but you can see she's struggling just a little bit, struggling even just to get that ski on edge, and that's been a bit of a problem, bouncing through those turns. This top part of the course is getting a whole lot rougher. This is where Elena went down. Claudia makes it through there, but doesn't look super fast, even though she's up by 4.5 seconds. That's kind of relative since
Yeah, of
Elena was
course.
on her side at that point.
Yeah.
Bouncing
Ooh.
through and coming back through that section.
Really having to put the brakes on there. And both these first two skiers have had significant problems, even though they haven't crashed out.
Right. Two of the favorites are not setting the standard that you'd expect them to set for this race, and what that does is that opens the door for anybody else. Everybody else who's hearing about this on the radio is immediately thinking that they're a contender to win the super combined race.
Now, will that change the way that they choose to race? Will they think, you know what, I now have to be a bit more sensible, and I'll have to maybe be a little bit more cautious, because if it's happening to them, the same thing can happen to me.
There is that potential, and I think that's something they're going to have to discuss with their coaches. The coaches watch all these athletes race. As we watch Claudia Loesch, and she's only up by 1.05 seconds, which is not much when you think that Elena Nichols spent a whole lot of time trying to get up.
Yeah.
So the two of these are opening it up, and yeah, it really is. It's go out and ski smart and make it to the finish, and win that slalom run. But so many things can happen, and we've seen huge differentials as far as first to third, first to fourth kind of thing in the monoski class, that somebody like Claudia Loesch could make up a ton of time if she is the best slalom skier.
And while, as we've said, there are several different contenders, as we see Loesch go 1.36 seconds behind, while there are several contenders in a smaller field, it doesn't take that many athletes to slip up to open the door onto the podium.
It really doesn't at this point. And this is probably the person that we're looking at saying the door is open for her. Stephanie Victor has been the top slalom skier in the world for a good long while. Can she have a good, solid Super G run? Because the two women who are stronger Super G skiers have already had huge difficulty, and they're separated by 1 point something seconds, and one of them went down for a good period of time. So neither of them had a good run.
That's right. Well, Victor was 5th in the Super G, which was actually her worst result of the week. So if she can turn it on here, she'll be sitting in good shape for this afternoon and the slalom, where she won a silver medal.
Some of this is being smart, and she's skiing pretty smart at this point. She really is. She's putting down a good run, not taking a ton of risk. So true to your point, Mark, is that she has decided, let's make some good turns, let's not risk a ton, and let's get to the bottom, and let's let the slalom take over. And
that's right.
And I think she'd be pretty comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Just making a nice solid run here.
So seems to have negotiated safely the areas where the other two had trouble. And we'll see at the checkpoint.
And a couple of other issues as she comes down here, where we do have that follow-away turn, and she's up by 4 seconds at this point over Elena Nichols.
Now, 4 seconds, obviously sizable, but considering Nichols was had that huge problem at the top, you can see that Victor, for the rest of the course, just eased off the gas slightly.
She has.
But that, at the moment, is very much working to her advantage, and she had that advantage going third.
She did have that advantage. The two people who would challenge her for the overall title already went in front of her, and she's coming across here and lost a little bit of time. She's up by 2.12 seconds. So not a super fast run.
No.
But she's happy to be in the lead.
And will she have known at that point? She's seen she's two seconds up.
Will she have known what happened? It's tough to tell whether she would have known what had happened or not. So this is Tatsuko Aoki from Japan. And she has had a bit of a rough ride on this course. She's been knocked down a few times, but certainly not one to be knocked out by any means.
That's right, still going strong at 50 years of age. And we'll see how she measures up to Victor's time here.
And you can hear just how hard it is. And oh, Aoki again in that same place. Oops. Coming through the flags. She's been beaten up a little bit by this course.
She has. It's going to be a sore trip home back to Japan for her, unfortunately.
It will, and it's the same issue that we've seen with a lot of the other racers. It's where Elena Nichols had her issue, where a bunch of the men had their issues, and just got caught leaning into the hill, coming out of that turn on the transition, coming off the pitch onto the flat.
Now these flags and the gates as well, how are they secured into the hill?
they'll take a drill and drill a hole and then stick the gates in there. I mean, these flags are not flexing the way that the gates are. The gates have an actual hinge at snow level, and they're threaded. So you screw the gate right into the hill. So you drill it in, screw it into the hill, and it is so at that point it's pretty solidly in there, but it does flex. These are not in there nearly as well, and they will, when she hit it, it definitely broke away a little bit for her, and so it wasn't like she was running into a solid metal pole or anything. These flags are there with the signage of the Vancouver Games, but they're also concerned with safety.
Absolutely. No, you don't want any pole that's going to put up much resistance to a sliding athlete who's crashed out and could be in any kind of position. And sizable Japanese support. We saw a young boy waving the flag earlier this week. There's another who's all dressed up.
I imagine there are a few at the hockey game as well.
That's right.
Or will be a few.
So 2 Americans leading the way, and Claudia Lurch, the Austrian, in 3rd place. Now, following Aoki, we have 3 more racers. Another American, Laurie Stevens, Anna Schaffelhuber of Germany, and Dyla Domino of Italy.
And Laurie was the Super G champion in Torino. She hasn't had as good a result. Her results haven't been as good here. She looks happy and smiling right there, interacting with her coach. I'd imagine she's looking to lay down a fast run at this point.
Let's go. Get it. Let's go. Up.
Well, good to see we're back underway already. So, certainly opportunities here for Stevens. The first 2 races both had problems, and Victor was clean but cautious, perhaps sensible, depending on how much she knew. So she was 2 seconds quicker, but wasn't as quick over certain sections as the other 2. So
right, exactly.
We'll see how Laurie does.
You can see where she's struggling just a little bit in that fall-away turn, struggling to kind of keep that ski tracking in the right direction. She is 2.17 seconds behind Victor at the moment. Coming through that little air section and got bounced around a little bit. Added a little extra turn, but is back on course. She looks like she's struggling a little bit with the hard snow, struggling to kind of get that ski on edge. And you can see that sometimes with the hard snow, especially on a monoski, it's hard to get into that position that you're used to being in, where you can really sort of stack the body on top of the ski. And you can see where she's sort of struggling to get that ski in position and not really comfortable in riding the edge as much. And so it makes for a more difficult run for her.
So Stevens comes down around these final turns. We have another checkpoint before the finish. And she's well back, 6 seconds. So she may have changed her strategy as well. There was a slight delay there with Aoki's crash, so she looked pretty relaxed at the top, didn't she, though?
She did look pretty relaxed at the top, and I think she's just struggling with her equipment is really what it looks like to me. And she is unlike Stephanie Victor, really needs to make her mark in the Super G. She's a much stronger Super G skier than she is a slalom skier.
Well, Stephanie Victor, Stevens' teammate at the moment, well placed, 2 seconds clear of the field, and we just have 2 more races as we see Anna Schaffelhuber of Germany in the starting gate. And Chris, we've had a few questions this week. Just a quick word about the blue lines on the course here.
Well, what the blue lines are doing, I mean, one, they're sort of directing, they're showing you where the course is, and sometimes they'll put the hash marks in there, and the hash marks are helping the skiers, especially when the visibility is diminished. They're helping to give them a little bit more depth on the course, and they see where the bumps are, or where the terrain goes, and it can be a huge advantage at that point, just because it can be so hard. Everything when the light goes bad, everybody gets to a point where they just can't see very much. And we see that Schoenfielder at this point is having a really good run. She's about 2 seconds out, which is a great run for her at this point.
But the blue lines are just guidelines, and there's absolutely no problem whatsoever if
you go outside of them.
Yeah,
no problem at all.
Back inside for the gates.
You have to make the gates. You have to go in between every gate. You have to break the plane of each gate. So there's the inside panel, which you see right there, and then you can't quite see the outside panels, but occasionally we'll see some of them. But there's an outside panel, so they have to go in between the outside one and the inside one.
So Schoenfielder comes down this middle section. We'll get a chance in just a moment to see how she's measuring up so far. Stephanie Victor, the time to beat at the moment. And it's still going to be the time to beat with just one more to come after Schoenfielder. And 5.6 seconds back. So Victor's time looking very, very good because, as you said, Chris, she needed to do as well as she can in the Super G because she's one of the top slalom skiers.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, for Stephanie Victor, this is a great position to be in. I'm sure that the elation for her is being on top, but it's also being in the finish of the Super G and knowing that she's on top with a little bit of a cushion coming in the slalom where she's so strong.
That's right. Well, Schoenfielder crosses here. The remaining skier, Dyla Domino, not expected to challenge necessarily. But of course, Stephanie Victor is now hoping that this was yesterday and it was just the Super G.
Exactly, yeah.
But now she's going to have to go away, maybe get something to eat, focus, try and stay calm and not get too excited because she's been desperate for a gold medal and doesn't have one so far at these games.
Well, she's had to earn it the hard way thus far, so it makes sense that it's going to take one more run to make it happen. But she also has to deal with Claudia Loesch and she has to deal with Elena Nichols, both of whom aren't really all that far behind her.
Now, in her position, will she just want to get back to the top and get down that slalom as quickly as possible, or will she be happy for the break?
Well, you're going to be happy for the break at that point. It's really, you don't have much of a choice because they know that they're the last class going. There'll be 5 classes going before them. We see Domina going down a little bit, but it looks like she's going to try to continue.
So she'll be
getting some encouragement from the course workers.
That's right, just trying to push herself back up onto her ski. She's right in the middle of the course, so no problem about crashing out. And hopefully she can continue to at least register a finish so that she can try and put this out of her mind, come back for the slalom, do as well as she can, and sign off with a good second run, at least, if not first.
Exactly.
So she is back on course here.
And you hear those course workers who are getting ready to take this course down, as Delia Domino is the final racer, but cheering her on all the same. They're not trying to rush her in any way, other than wanting her to go fast to the finish.
It'll be mixed emotions at the end of today for the course workers because they've worked so hard throughout the week and before, just trying to keep this hill in top shape.
And they have done a wonderful job of that. But also, I think that I hear that there's a little bit of rain coming on the way, potentially. And so those course workers probably are pretty happy if it's going to rain. They don't want to be out there.
That's right.
They put their work in.
But I'm sure they've enjoyed their Olympic and Paralympic experiences. And so they'll be sorry, as we all are, to see things come to a close.
We see Domino at that point, 35 seconds out. So certainly will not be challenging for a medal, but if she finishes, she gets to take a run of slalom and can well put her stamp on this race with a great slalom run. So let's see what she can do.
So it's going to be Stephanie Victor of the US who leads at the halfway stage. Huge cheer here for Domino, and we've seen the crowd in good voice throughout this week. So disappointment, but she will be back for the slalom run this afternoon. And just to recap, if you're joining us here on Paralympic Sport TV, the Super Combined is a combination of one Super G run and then one slalom run, which we will have coming up for you later. So Victor, Nichols and Loesch, the top 3. And Chris will be back later on.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Yep.